I've been living by these days is ready, fire, aim. And I think
Nice.
a really important transitional kind of attitude that I've had, because uh, waiting around for circumstances to be perfect is just, it's a death sentence. It's an absolute death sentence. So the ready, fire, aim model has been working for me pretty well so far. And, I think that that's how you got to get shit done in this day and age.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Budo Brothers podcast. Today we have a very special guest, our homeboy, black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, YouTube legend, none other than Eli Knight. Eli Knight, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Do you ever like introduce somebody though, and it's like not a special guest? It's like we have a very average guest.
It's
a
pretty
very
simple.
mediocre.
We don't bring them on the show. Like
No.
unless you're good at what you do, sorry, you're not on here.
Only the finest. And if every guest is the best, that just means we have to keep finding better guests. So they're always the best.
Yeah. So I'm happy to come in this late. That's good.
Yes,
That's excellent.
exactly. So Eli, for those who don't know, we got together a couple of years ago now and filmed Jiu-Jitsu Deep Dive. That's a full-length digital seminar, full course. For those who have checked it out, obviously we've had some amazing feedback and lots of people enjoying the content. But for those who don't know about your martial arts background, could you maybe just give us a bit of a update?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's one of the coolest projects I've ever been a part of. Like that was really a project where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna just shoot everything on this. Like I'm gonna put my whole heart into this project, because I've been doing martial arts. I had some people recently remind me or let me know it's been 30 years now that I've been
Nice.
training, a little over 30 years, honestly, but 30 years since I've been doing jiu-jitsu. And I started with, I started originally Taekwondo like 100 years ago, but it was, once I got into jiu-jitsu, it was like more Japanese style with a Filipino influence. And I started getting into just everything. I was very lucky to meet the people I met because they had Jason Hawkins particularly, but he had a background in, he was studying Filipino martial arts at the time. He was studying Jeet Kune Do. He was studying Indonesian Silat, everything he could get his hands on. And he had a third degree black belt already in, like, it's easiest to say Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. But this was also around the time of the first UFC. So the world was kind of catching on to this whole Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu thing. And it was like, blowing up. And so we started to stalk Royce Gracie around the nation and his family, and attend his seminars and camps and whatever we could get our hands on. And that was when we really started to transition into that. So over time, the main things I've kept up with actual martial arts wise, besides jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, whatever paradigm of that, is Muay Thai. And Muay Thai was the one thing that I feel like I've kind of kept up on, not nearly to the degree of jiu-jitsu, but at this point though, it's just anything practical and fight related. That's why I use the moniker a lot of the time of fighty stuff. It's been kind of the way I like brand things, because it kind of encompasses the way I like to approach the study at this point.
Very cool. And we have to thank you because you're the one who started us on our jiu-jitsu journey.
Yes.
Eric and I have been practicing now consistently on a consistent basis up in the ground game, and we love it, and we're so glad that we added it into our arsenal. And the training is amazing. It's one of the arts where you could realistically go to 90 to 100, almost 100% of your max, and like spar with somebody, train with them. And if you've only done stand-up fighting your whole martial arts career, ground is just like starting from scratch. It's completely different.
It's a game changer for sure if your primary background's in standing. And I remember you asking me, you texted me a question a while back. This has been months, if not a year or more ago. It was something specific in ground grappling, and I just remember being so happy to get that text. I'm like, oh shit, he's really getting into this. He's really taking this seriously, and that's really cool that you guys have been pursuing jiu-jitsu like that. So I was really happy to hear that.
And it's been both Kyle and I realized that that was a huge hole in our game, and that's actually what led us to seek out a digital seminar with someone amazing like yourself. And that's where we got connected, and luckily got to travel down to Kentucky, show us the ropes. It was our first time in Kentucky, and you got us onto bourbon,
Yes.
which I have the bottle sitting
So
right
while
here.
Eric pours that, I'll tell you the story.
All right, I will get
That's
it.
a good segue. Yeah.
One thing when we film, we create friendships with people, right? So, we really like to go down, get the energy, get the film, and then we also do fun events. So we decided to go out one night in Kentucky. I think it was a weekday, and just check what it was like. And you showed us this bourbon spot and some crazy dancers from some dancing from some locals while we were sitting at the bar. Some old guy wearing FUBU and just cutting it up on the dance floor. So
you get to experience a unique part of Kentucky on top of that. So it's not the typical. When people think Kentucky, they usually think Louisville or Lexington, and that's about it. And that's on the other side of the state over there, And then Paducah is very western part. It's a little tri-state area, so it's got a little bit of an identity crisis, but at the same time, it has that nice kind of hometown feel. I tell everybody, the saying is a nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. Paducah is the opposite. It's like, I don't know why you would visit there, but it's a good place to live, and there's some really cool parts of it. So you get somebody that knows the area, then you're going to see some fun and some cool stuff. And it's just always a good laid back vibe there too. So it's cool.
Well, thank you for getting us on the bourbon train. Let's raise a glass to catching up. It's so good to see you. Cheers.
Yeah.
I gotta say, when I came to Kentucky, I hadn't researched it at all, so I was just coming down to do the seminar, and I got off, and I was like, "Let's go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. Isn't that from Kentucky?" You're like, "Bro, Kentucky Fried Chicken is not founded in Kentucky." I felt like such an a-hole.
Oh no, dude, I recently I didn't know that, except I think a couple years prior to that, I learned that the actual first Kentucky Fried Chicken, that was a restaurant, fast food place, was in Utah. Because I was out doing a seminar in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was with Jared Wehongi, and he was driving me through somewhere. We were heading up to Ogden, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, over there's the first Kentucky Fried Chicken." I was like, "Dude, I'm from Kentucky. Like, there's no way the first Kentucky Fried Chicken was in Utah, of all places." He was like, "Yeah." He's like, the Kentucky Fried Chicken started in Kentucky as a little roadside stand, but like when it became a actual fast food chain, the first one was in Utah. I was like, "What the hell, man? How do I not know this?
Oh man,
How are you gonna teach me about my culture?"
So you're no longer in Kentucky. Where has life taken you?
Yeah. So, what is today? I don't know. About a month ago, a little over a month ago now, I moved from Kentucky to Charlotte, North Carolina, and so after living basically my whole life in Paducah, Kentucky, I made the move out here to Charlotte, and that's where I am now. So I moved out here. I'm teaching at Fit to Fight out here in Charlotte.
Nice.
And yeah, so it's been really cool. I learned about this place years back. I met Ryan Hoover through some work we did with Funker Tactical, and then we developed a friendship. He had me come out and teach at some of the Hard Ready events that they have out here, which is a really cool event. Remind me to come back to that. But we just kept in contact over the years. I kept coming out. I met my girlfriend several years back that through those travels and her coming to jiu-jitsu, and we just got to know each other, established a relationship. We've been doing the long distance thing for way too long. And so it's kind of that finally that moment of like, you gotta like ready. Sometimes it's the big maxim I've been living by these days is ready, fire, aim. And I think that's a really important transitional kind of attitude that I've had, because waiting around for circumstances to be perfect is it's a death sentence. It's an absolute death sentence. So the ready, fire, aim model has been working for me pretty well so far. And, I think that's how you got to get shit done in this day and age.
That's really cool. I like that. That's some life wisdom. And I hopefully you're. Actually, I've seen pictures of your girlfriend on Instagram and the socials, and
Whoa, wait,
you're
what?
you're you're holding you're holding true to this stat that Eric and I have about martial artists. And you're a good looking dude. Don't get me wrong, but martial artists, for whatever reason, bat way out of their league. Like they get way hotter girls than they should be. I don't. Maybe it's
Yeah.
because they can protect or whatever. Like
Hey.
I'm batting out of my league. You're batting out of your league. Like
I'm
it's
still
just.
howling.
Dude, and she's a badass too, so I don't know what her excuse is, but I'm not questioning that too much. I'm going with it. But she's definitely not only is she just amazingly gorgeous, and she's brilliant. She's a PA. She's done everything, and she's just an absolute athlete. Like it's. I will say that living out here, she's been like kicking my ass, like getting my ass in better shape, and I try to take care of myself to whatever degree, but having her hold me accountable for things, and I'm getting up at way earlier than I would normally get up, and going and working out with her at the beginning of the day, and then I'm teaching sometimes a couple times a day, and training a couple times a day, and then hitting training on the weekends. And so I've actually stepped my game up a lot since I've been out here, and she's the one like holding my feet to the fire. So I can't say how much I appreciate having that in my life now. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
It's the balance that brings you to your peak performance, and I feel like every man needs a strong woman in their lives to be complete. That's and amen to that. So now your training. I mean, obviously you've reached a level in jiu-jitsu where you're really, the world's your oyster, and you can focus on anything. I'm curious, like, what are you focusing on right now? From two white belts that are just newbies in the sport, we're still trying to learn our alphabet. What is someone like yourself working on now in this day and age, and what do you got on the go?
Man, I tell you, I'm like some days I try to have fun with everything. I try to make sure that fun is at the forefront of it, because I'm not going to be a world champion or world class like competitor right now, because I know what it takes, and what it takes now versus what it took even 10 years ago or 20 years ago is so dramatically different in the world of jiu-jitsu. And it's a constant battle to even just keep up on current things. And I feel like I owe it to people that I train with to at least have some kind of comprehension of it. So whenever, even new trends come out, I want to make sure that I have at least a tacit understanding of these things and how they work and the inner workings of them. So there is that, but I also want to keep the foundational elements of self-defense and all of its facets too, because that's so many different layers. So this whole game, man, it's there's so much to it, and there's so much to keep up with. So it's a constant studying process, constant training process to try to keep abreast of it all. It really is a lot just to some days just keep my head above water. I mean, I'll go in and train with people these days, and they'll ask me about something that they saw on YouTube, and I'm like, shit, I don't know what the hell is this that you're talking about? And then I'll look it up, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's like this, but this person over here is taking it this direction.
And
so
you do a backflip.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, and it gets like that sometimes. So it's really interesting to see, and which is, it's great and awful at the same time. It's awful trying to just tread water, and this is something that I've been doing for like 30 years and still feel like I'm got to keep up. But at the same time, it's really cool because it's like it's limitless. I mean, like it never stops, it never dies, it never even like pauses or what's the term for it? Whenever you're idle, it never is idle. So there's constantly this next level you can advance to, and that's really cool to see. And the biggest thing that it's helped me do is I don't feel like I had the worst problem with this, but I think that everybody does struggle with it, and I'm no exception to that, is feeling like, okay, well, I've done it this long, I've done this much, I've accomplished this and this and this, so I should be at this level, but I'm not, because now everybody else just keeps going, and I'm like just trying to keep up with that. So once you kind of relinquish the ego at that point, then it allows you to kind of open your perspective about, well, okay, this white belt over here that's been training for 3 years and still has a white belt for some reason can show me something. This guy over here that he doesn't do what I do. He hasn't been doing it as long as I do. But he has something to offer with me. And I just have to be receptive of that. And I have to feel the same on the other end. It's like whenever I go to somebody who I'm like, okay, there's no way I have anything to offer this guy. We had a couple guys come through just last night with Blackout Grappling, which are some phenomenal guys. David Patron, they're down in Florida, and I've been a big admirer of their game for a long time because they're doing some really unique hybrid kind of stuff. And they came and they took one of my classes last night, and dropped in, and we had a good time. And I was like, man, that I still get that feeling of intimidation of like, oh shit, man, I got to teach a class with this very experienced, very knowledgeable guy in it. So what do I have to offer? How do I need to specially customize this class? But at the end of the day, though, it's like, somebody will have something to offer you. That was the thing that I discovered a long time ago with training under Hoist for as long as I did. I saw him teach the same thing for literal decades. And I could find something in 15 years deep that he would show it, and I'd be like, damn, there's a little detail, this little precision detail that I wasn't picking up on any time before this, and now it makes sense because I'm ready for it. And it's a beautiful thing, and you have to like know and appreciate and love the arts for that, I think.
It's funny that martial arts is one of those disciplines that those small realizations are not available to you until 15 years, because I feel like we are constantly, our minds are continually blown. And even with things that are new, they get blown. But those insights that you see, that you've probably done 1,000 arm bars, or, and it just takes one different angle to make you connect. But if you hadn't done the 1,000 reps, you wouldn't be able to connect the dots. And I think martial arts is one of the only.
No, I think that's.
No?
I think
Is that
that's
just
the,
in general?
I think that's the script
Just
for
experience?
life. Like business too. You keep getting trapped, and you're like, oh man, if I would have been doing this little tweak,
Yes,
like
would have had a. It's
yeah,
true.
Like for us, Facebook marketing, just different things like that. But I really feel like you get stuck in this repetitive cycle, and you can't see what you don't know, and like one little thing can just spark you to like get into this whole new realm of like doing it better, more efficiently, more effectively, adding to it. And it's just like you just don't know what you don't know, and you have to achieve a certain base level of understanding before you could even see what a person's teaching you or see the information that is in front of you.
Yeah, no, I believe that fully, absolutely. And on the other end of that spectrum too, is that it's interesting because you can get too enamored with the new. You can get too enamored with, this current latest trend puts all the old stuff to bed. It puts all this other stuff to shame. So I'm going to just jump on this because it's new and it's shiny, But then you realize later on, with a little bit of wisdom under your belt, it's like, shit, it wasn't that this new shiny thing was better than the former thing. It was that I didn't have a deep enough understanding and appreciation of the former thing to really put it to its maximum usage, and that's something, again, with training under somebody for a long enough amount of time, you start to appreciate their wisdom. It's like, I learned this 20 years ago, and now I see everybody doing this thing a different way. So it must be that this new different way, that's the trend right now, it must be superior, right? Well, maybe, but at the same time, there's never a shortage of different things that come back around. I remember whenever the kettlebell explosion happened and exercising and stuff, and like everybody's talking about kettlebells, it's all the new rage, it's all the new trend, and it became really fashionable, I don't know, 15 years ago or whatever. And it's like these things have been, these little cannonballs with handles on them have been around Russia for like however many years, decades, centuries. And it's like, but it comes back around, right? Yoga explosions, Pilates explosions. It's all this kind of stuff. And Jiu-Jitsu is the same way. You can look at this old black and white footage of people in the 1930s or 40s playing De La Riva guard, which everybody, credits to coming about in the mid to late 90s, so it's really interesting to kind of see that trajectory of it, because I think the most interesting thing about it is that it forces you to kind of have to keep an open mind, because if you don't, if you just shut off everything and think, I just have to find the newest, best, shiniest thing, you're going to miss out on a lot of old wisdom that, you'll appreciate later.
Mm.
I'm curious because you were mentioning things go into a boom and like they peak interest, and that's really hot right now and that's really trending. Where do you see jiu-jitsu in its cycle? Is it still coming up? Has it peaked? Where do you think it is?
That's a great question, man. I think, um, if you ask me yesterday or tomorrow, I might have a different answer, because I think right now we've never lived in a time where information, is so accessible, high quality information. And it's not just like, granted, you go onto YouTube and you Google, or you go onto YouTube and you search for some move, some technique, some whatever, you're going to find, 1,000 results, and maybe 75% of them are going to be complete trash. But, of the 25% remaining, you're going to have a lot of different opinions that are all valid, that are looking through different lenses. So, what this does, I think, is that it creates this environment, it creates this ecosystem, or this atmosphere, or whatever you want to call it, that is continually, taking everything on an upward trajectory. And typically, whenever things do that and they grow like that, there's the thing you got to watch out for is a balloon. You got to watch out for the balloon. You got to watch out for the ceiling. What happens whenever things, hit that, and then where does it go from there? But man, we're in unprecedented times, with the information exchange and everything else, and that's why I recognized that with YouTube a long time ago. Is like, that's, man, there's never been anything like this, and I can't imagine what's gonna be superior to this in times coming. So it's hard to say, man. Like, you know, I changed my opinion about, do I want jujitsu to be in the Olympics someday? Because you asked me that today. I'm like, hell no, never want jujitsu to be in the Olympics. That would be the worst thing to happen to jujitsu. You know, 10 years ago, I might be like, oh, that'd be so awesome if one day we saw jujitsu in the Olympics, but it changes, it oscillates a little bit.
I'm curious to understand that a little more. Why would jujitsu in the Olympics be a bad thing?
Hmm. Because judo.
Yeah.
Look what happened to judo, right? So
Boxing as well. Olympic boxing is nothing
yeah,
like. Yeah.
absolutely, right. So you now what happens is you, have a codified set of rules that you're going to apply. That you have to. Granted, you have to do it. The Olympic Committee has to have a codified set of rules for any Olympic event. So okay, then those go through refinement after refinement, and you have anything that is decided by committee, and especially when that committee is very large and has a lot of different, influences from a lot of different paradigms, then you're bound to get some kind of amalgamation that is going to corrupt whatever the original intention of that thing was before. I remember being in college, and it's like a graphic design class, and my nobody else laughed at the joke, but I thought it was fucking hilarious. And my professor was, he said, "You know what a camel is, right?" And everybody's just kind of looking at each other. He's like, "It's a composite drawing of a horse." And I was like, that's brilliant to me, because I saw it instantly. I'm like, okay, when you get people together and by committee they try to describe what a horse looks like, and somebody's trying to draw it out on a third party, you're going to come up with a camel probably, or some
Right.
other kind of weird beast, right? It's nothing like the original intended thing they were trying to set out
Mm.
to create. So I think that's what would happen with jiu-jitsu ultimately if it got into the Olympics, is that it would be, um, it would be cool. It'd be a cool sport. It would be, but the thing that would happen is that would become the standard. Now, what happens to all these athletes who, what's the height, what's the pinnacle of your existence right now as a jiu-jitsu athlete, as a competitor, as an athlete? It's to win this title or win this, competition or whatever. Well, now you can go to the Olympics, you can get an Olympic medal, which means endorsements for life. Okay, well, I'm going to train that under that codified set of rules.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, the standard becomes that codified set of rules. Just like with judo, you go into a judo school that takes judo very seriously and wants to train their students and their athletes to ultimately compete in Olympic judo. Well, you're going to be training judo with the finite set of conventions of that sport. Now you've lost the elements of self-defense to some extent. You've lost a lot of the historical context. You've lost a lot of stuff that you could otherwise do in free sparring, whether it's standing or on the ground, that now it breaks rules. So we're not going to train that anymore. We can't do that move because it goes against the rules. So that's always going to be a problem. That's why I typically prefer these days jiu-jitsu without the gi versus with the gi, because a lot of the competitions no gi these days I feel like are truer of the essence of jiu-jitsu than a lot of the gi competitions, which sounds a little counterintuitive, but when you look at a lot of the gi competitions these days, it makes a lot of sense.
Really cool. Now, I noticed that jiu-jitsu is like also expanding. I was watching this, I don't know what type of jiu-jitsu it was, but it was like 5 UFC fighters versus 5 Strikeforce fighters, and they would go in and like there's a timer and your goal is to eliminate the other team. Like they're doing some crazy stuff, and then there's other ones where you're allowed slapping, and like there's so many different things that they're spinning on jiu-jitsu, right? Or adding elements to it to make it more complete. But one thing that I really am enjoying the hype around is this whole kind of wrestling versus jiu-jitsu that's happening in the UFC. And you're kind of getting back to those old school vibes, like which is better. Like there was a fight recently, Burns versus Chima. Yeah. And one is an amazing wrestler and one is a excellent jiu-jitsu practitioner. I was wondering, from a jiu-jitsu practitioner, how do you feel jiu-jitsu is in a sport like MMA? Where does it fit? Where doesn't it fit? And if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think honestly, um, when it really gets into conversations of like this versus that, I think almost on any level of martial arts, when you get people arguing in comment sections of videos, or something like that, I think what happens is you typically have people who haven't trained very long that are at the height of those arguments. And I think that people who have a true appreciation for fighting and for martial arts and for martial arts practice and study and legitimate training, I think that what happens is they recognize that you get somebody like Burns and Chimaev, and I don't know how to pronounce his name either, I apologize, but Chimaev, who just phenomenal world-class fighters. There's no planet, there's no timeline, there's no universe in which those two guys are fighting that it's a this versus that style. Like
Right.
it just doesn't exist. I mean, it's so it's fun. It sparks a lot of conversation, and it leads to some entertaining arguments sometimes. But I mean, Gilbert Burns, you put him with most wrestlers on the planet, and he's going to hold his own. You
Mm-hmm.
put Chimaev with most jiu-jitsu guys in the world, he's going to hold his own. So it's like, they're not, there's no such thing anymore, that was what was so cool about the early UFCs. You could really see, okay,
Yes.
this guy's pure karate. He knows nothing but karate conventions. This guy's purely this style of kung fu. This guy's purely judo. So it was a little more pure back then, but purity in that sense kind of means ignorance, these days. Now you get somebody who's like, oh, he's more of a boxer, he's more of a this, he's more of that. All you're really saying, like the real translation of that is you're saying that this guy, it's not that this is his level of proficiency, it's that he's ignorant in all these other elements. Because everybody's a good boxer, everybody's a good grappler, everybody's a good this and that. Everybody has multiple backgrounds these days. They have to. You can't survive without it. So that's kind of what's cool about it. Now. I say this and coming from a guy whose like whole branding is Knight Jiu-Jitsu. So obviously I have a stylistic prejudice in the game, right? So whenever I put out a video and it's something that's obvious that I got from catch wrestling, it's obvious I got this from some other place, because jiu-jitsu doesn't stereotypically look this way. But the reason that I use that moniker of jiu-jitsu is because that for me is more of a almost more of a philosophical lens that I view things through. Because to me, jiu-jitsu is something so far beyond just a set of techniques. I've got good friends in jiu-jitsu that are black belts, that are high level practitioners, that their jiu-jitsu versus guys they have promoted to black belt under them, their styles look vastly different. They do very different things. They don't. So it's not like as much of a formulated sequence in the curriculum as like you need to know this, this, and this for your next belt or level test. So for me, it's very much a philosophical kind of thing, and jiu-jitsu has given me the lens to view a lot of things, um, martial arts related and beyond martial arts related, with a certain kind of kind of a flavor, kind of a sense to it. So even if somebody goes out and they have they go into a fight in the UFC and 85% of the fight is standing up, 15% is on the ground, and I can see that jiu-jitsu made the difference in that person, um, and in that fight, in the complexion of that fight. And it was mostly from it wasn't even necessarily because they used an arm bar, they used a bag take, they used a choke, they used a foot lock, they used whatever. It was because they looked at things through a lens of like energy efficiency. They looked at how to like control positions. They looked at how to manipulate different situations with that kind of jujitsu perspective on it. It had that kind of flavor to it. So that's what jujitsu means to me these days.
Yeah. Do you think that martial arts instruction and uh, education now has forever changed because of the internet and how information's transferred? Before, when we were younger, there was only a style, right? And then you had to go into yellow pages and look for it and go there. Like you knew nothing else, right? Then this UFC thing came, and now you're on researching all these different arts, and you have catch wrestling. Do you think, as a teacher of martial arts now, you have to teach ground to standing, wrestling, everything included? Like, do you think that's now what martial arts has morphed to? Or do you still see the value in segmenting the pieces and then letting people go, maybe studio academy to studio academy?
And I think it's complicated. I think it's really complicated because um, when people hear jujitsu these days, they picture Brazilian ground grappling. That's what they picture. I think that so in some ways it has shrunken the focus of certain martial arts, and in some ways it's expanded it. And because like we were talking about, I think that you get into a high level, professional level of fighting, and you have to know everything. You have to know every range. You have to know the best tactics. You have to know how to be efficient. You have to be a superior athlete. You have to have all these qualities that maybe 20 years ago was completely different. But at the same time, it's like when you're talking to these same kind of fighters, it's like, oh yeah, I've been working on my jujitsu. Well, that means probably that fighter said that because he's been working on his specific ground grappling submission game, looking at transitioning and escaping positions, looking at how to kind of dominate positions, looking at how to apply submission holds. He's probably not talking about what, from a lot of traditionalists in jiu-jitsu would consider standing self-defense, which would include striking, which would include throws and takedowns, which would include, positional control on the ground, which would include a lot of other elements besides just strictly how to do an arm bar, how to do a rear naked choke. So, in some ways it's been very beneficial. In some ways it's been detrimental. But it's kind of interesting to see though, because it does make people kind of stand up and take notice. So they have to at least, get in there and do the thing and then learn more about it. So I don't know, man. I'm not sure. I kind of, again, I fluctuate between extremes about how much good I think that the ubiquity of information is right now and how much it's detrimental.
It's
Yeah.
kind of a balance, right? I mean, the specialization in each of these arts is which gives the ingredient to a complete fighter. So I can see the value in both, right?
Yeah.
To have a well-rounded edge, you need it all. And if you need it all, you need to seek out those who have specialized in the areas in which you have some leaky holes.
And that's where I was getting to a while ago. I'm glad that you said that, because I think that a big element of it, and the analogy that I use a lot of the time, is that you can probably eventually become a pretty good mechanic by going into a garage and taking apart a car and reassembling it a number of times and kind of figuring out, okay, this goes here, this goes there, this is how these things work. But I would much rather personally apprentice under a master mechanic so that he can kind of guide me and save me a lot of learning time, and I don't have to do everything by trial and error. So whenever I see little like pop-up MMA garages where, you know, guys want to go in and just beat the shit out of each other, you know, all day, every day, they're going to become good fighters eventually. But man, you can save yourself a lot of pain and heartache and bumps and bruises by going and training under somebody with a knowledgeable education that's been doing this for a long time and knows how to guide you in that process. So even though there's the overabundance of information on YouTube and wherever else, all these instructionals just everywhere, you need somebody to help you sort through the weeds, because there's plenty of bullshit out there. And then the beginner's eye, a lot of it can be very similar. You know, you get the flashy guy over here and he looks a lot cooler doing this than this other guy over here doing it. But what you don't realize is this other guy over here can make the shit work. This guy over here just makes it look pretty, you know? So it still requires a kind of a supervising eye on you to help lead you through a lot of that stuff.
And basics always work, right? Basics in everything. How many people go back to jab and stand-up fighting? How many people go back to standard guard pass in regular jiu-jitsu? You don't need all these crazy things. You just need to do the things that you know extremely well, right? Do you ever get scared that jiu-jitsu drifts so far into sport that people forget that it actually could be used for self-defense?
Not as much as a lot of people do, because there's a big ongoing just kind of source of contention, I guess, in the jiu-jitsu community, between, you know, old school traditionalists and you know, luckily I have a foot in both worlds, so I can kind of have a unique perspective, I feel like, on it. You know, old school traditionalists and new school competition guys. Whereas, you know, I think it's the fringe elements that are on these sides of the argument, of saying the new school guys saying, oh, self-defense is bullshit, you know, like you're wasting your time, like just learn how to fight, just period, learn how to fight. Learning self-defense moves and techniques is stupid, yada yada. And then on the flip side, on the other end of the extreme, with these self-defense guys, they're like, yeah, well, you're not going to berimbolo somebody in a street fight. You're not going to play these crazy guards where you're pulling the guy's lapel under his leg and doing this and flipping upside down and doing all that. You're not going to do that in a street fight, so why bother with it? And most people, though, I found in travels and interactions and conversations, are somewhere in between. Normal humans with a functioning brain can compartmentalize and contextualize, like, okay, look, yeah, I'm not a fucking idiot. Sorry, I'm not sure what the language barrier is on there.
We're sailors.
Do you?
You're welcome.
Okay, good. So I'm not a fucking idiot. I know I'm not going to go out and do a flying triangle in a street fight, probably on concrete, when there might be other guys around with chainsaws. You know, that's probably not my go-to move. You know, and then, you know, the other end of it is, yeah, you know, I'm probably not going to go out into a competition and think that I'm going to pull off, you know, some kind of standing armbar thing that, you know, or I'm not going to have to worry about disarming somebody's weapon in a competition. So why would I study that? And it's like, man, study what you like, study what you think you're going to have use for in your life. If you don't believe you're ever going to be in a street fight, you don't believe you're ever going to be in a self-defense confrontation where you're going to need certain self-defense skills, don't train it. You know, I mean, sucks if that happens. It sucks if you do find yourself in that and you don't know what to do. But I mean, it's your prerogative, man. You know, like the main thing that I ask for people is just be honest about what you're doing. If you're running a sports school where your main focus, your only real concern for the most part for your students is to win as many gold medals so you can hang them up on your wall as you can, dude, that's awesome. That's fantastic. You do you, your students, like, more power to them, fantastic. But don't say you're teaching the complete art of jiu-jitsu or of whatever, because you're not. You are a sport competition school, and that's fantastic. Don't try to be something you're not. Now, on the flip side, don't shit on people who want to go out and compete, and don't shit on people who want to go out and win all the gold medals they can, because you think, well, if you're not learning how to handle yourself against a mugger in a parking lot at midnight, then you're not doing real jiu-jitsu. It's like, man, the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is because it has surpassed being a martial art, has surpassed being a sport, and it's both and it's neither, and it's fantastic, and it's something that can change lives, and that's what it should do. And whatever route it needs to go to change your life, that's the route you.
It's a complete culture now. Hey, like it's crazy to see what has happened to it in the last 10 years. I think as far as a martial arts culture, it's probably
It's up
could
there.
be number one. Like, there's different there's certain martial arts that have a big culture to it, and like Brazilian jiu-jitsu culture and like awareness is growing at the fastest right now, I would say. So it's really awesome to see that. But future plans, man, what's on the horizon? What are you thinking?
Like there's a I was thinking about that the other day, because I wanted 5 years ago or 10 years ago to be doing what I'm doing right now. So, but it kind of occurred to me too, though. It's like, I don't need to just, my vision for the future doesn't need to stay status quo. So I want to advance. I want to get, doing better things. So, right now I'm trying to get better at jiu-jitsu, and about better at fighting and fighting stuff. I want to get better at a lot of it, and really hone in and organize things a lot better, become more organized, more better at teaching, better at conveying information. I've got a lot of seminars coming up, and
Nice.
I want to really hone in on that information so I can, spread it around better. And I want to build that. I love doing seminars. I like traveling, and so I want to keep that going, and build up my classes now that I'm here in Charlotte. It's a new environment and new blood, so I get to build that up. So that's all cool. But there's other things that I'm kind of venturing into and seeing kind of what sticks. So there's some merchandising ideas I've got.
Nice.
There's some NFT ideas and stuff that I've got that I'm a little apprehensive about, but I'm right there on the cusp, about to bite into it. So it's cool stuff like that. And like I said, man, right now it's about I want to quit stressing about a lot of elements of it, because I don't want to sour a lot of the things that I love and appreciate about martial arts, and luckily I've been one of the fewest victims of burnout, or one of the mildest victims of burnout over the years. I know people that have done this not nearly as long as I have, that got so burnt out they just bailed, they just ghosted on the training part of it. And that's just not me. And so I've been very fortunate in finding ways to keep myself energized about the training element of it. So that's the main thing I want to keep doing, man. It's like I just want to keep doing it, keep having fun, making new projects, making cool new videos, figuring out new ways to present the information to people that haven't tasted it yet.
I'm curious for you to just expand a little bit. What is the chemical composition of your afterburners that prevents you from burning out? Is that genetic? Is that like, what is your rocket fuel that keeps you going?
Man, well, I think a lot of it, it may not be the sexiest answer, but I've had plenty of things over the years that jiu-jitsu has like kind of literally kept me together at the seams when a lot of other stuff was just falling apart around me. And I think whenever something is like that, truly like that for you in your life, then there's just no question about whether or not it's not like it's like, man, I'm really getting burnt out on this having to eat 3 times a day. That shit's getting old. I'm getting really burnt out on this having to sleep every single night. It's not a question anymore. And the other part about it too, and this is an analogy that I kind of came up with when I was teaching a kids class years back. And man, sometimes you come up with an analogy, and it's not that it's like the most profound thing in the world, but it hits you so hard at the time that you kind of like, whew, like I just kind of thought of it this way, and it took my own breath away. So like, I thought about loving something for what it is, and there's a great saying like, love it for what it is and don't hate it for what it's not. That's cool. But for me specifically, it was like I thought about, if my kid runs up to me and gives me a hug, I'm not like, psh, I've had this hug before. Psh, it's not that. It's like every single time is just there's no feeling like it in the world. When you're in love with somebody and they grab you and they kiss you, it doesn't matter if it's a first or 20,000th time, that thing is special. And you're like, in that moment, it doesn't matter what was going on. It doesn't matter really anything else in the world, And so I think when something takes hold of you like that, and for me, jiu-jitsu did that, it didn't literally like hug me and kiss me, but it like, it fulfilled something in me. It filled something at the times that I needed it so badly that now it's like, man, I can't even imagine what am I without jiu-jitsu? Like if I was a paralyzed from the neck down tomorrow, roll my ass in there on the mats and I'm going to be content. I'm not going to be able to escape anything, but I'm going to appreciate the environment. I'm going to appreciate the atmosphere that it is. So that's what it is to me, honestly,
That's beautiful. And I think we all need to find that in our own individual lives.
I love it. Awesome. Where can everybody reach you?
Let's see, Knight Jiu-Jitsu. If you put in like Knight, like Knight Jiu-Jitsu into whatever social media thing, then I'll probably pop up pretty high in there, I think. So the big ones for me, obviously YouTube, Patreon. My Patreon is the one that helps feed me. So like, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
Wicked.
And for everyone listening, if you want to try Jiu-Jitsu Deep Dive,
yes,
we have a special promo code for you because this is a complete masterpiece that we collaborated on that we are incredibly proud of. If you want to check it out, use promo code Eli Podcast, 30% off. Oh, we're going deep. We're going deep. Eli Podcast.
Man, it's great seeing you guys face to face, even virtually, and getting to catch up. And yeah, we got to do this again sometime. I really appreciate it. And I miss you guys. We got to hook up.
All right, Eli, we'll catch you soon.
Yes.
And to everybody listening, we'll see you next week.